Okay, well, thank you for coming back, and thanks to John for the invitation and for Doc for allowing him to extend the invitation to me, and just good to see each of you. So, just a reminder, if you haven't been here every week, the first week we talked about the Bible and money, which actually could be extended to 4 weeks if we wanted to. And last week we talked about why we give and why we don't. And this week we're talking about a legacy of generosity. So what I would like for you to do, and I was actually hoping you could write these down, like if you've got just a scrap of paper there, or make a note on your phone or whatever it may be. But whatever, we're going to talk about the shape of family in a minute, but your families, there's more than one of you, I'd like you to write down a couple words, just not rhetorical, but what are your family values? What do you value yourself? What do you value with others in related to? Just give me a word or two. You don't have to say it out loud. But I want you to be able, it's so easy when we just say, just think about it. We'll just kind of scatter a couple of different thoughts, but not really commit ourselves to them. I'm going to name mine in a minute. So if something comes to you, you write it down, okay? Now, second question is, who knows your values? If you would claim these are your personal values, or if you were to claim that they are your family values, when have you had a conversation or an intentional teaching moment with someone in your family? And I think a lot about children. John can testify to my urgency about parenting and now grandparenting and the influence on children. I particularly think about this. When was the last time you told, if you have children, grandchildren, the last time you told one of them what it is that you really value in life and why? Now, this can be a little bit threatening because it forces us to reveal certain things about ourselves. But the question is, what does money communicate about your values? And so here's a question that I've alluded to, because we always talk about mega millions or whatever. But could a pot full of money change your life? Now, you don't have to answer out loud, but the question is, could a pot full of money change your life? So here are some big money pots that have dropped on people. Anybody familiar with the Georgia Land Lottery of 1832? Did your family? Your family? Okay. So you can correct me if I'm wrong. Did I see somebody else over here? Yeah? You're familiar with the concept. So there are several problems with the Georgia Land Lottery. The land was taken from the Cherokees, and it was restricted by gender and race as to who could participate in it. But I think it was a $5 fee. You could enter the Georgia Land Lottery, and if you were drawn, I think it was 50 acres. Is that right? Anybody? Yes. Was it 40? Yeah, so 40 or 50 acres. And the estimate is that would probably be a couple $100,000 today. So it's, that's walking around money at the very least, isn't it? I mean, that would be a pot full of money. So the one we most commonly think of is Powerball. But also we see this with professional athletes. I mean, even college athletes, even high school athletes today that sign NIL deals. I mean, it's just, I can't comprehend. how much money that is. And then probably the most common one might be an inheritance. And this does not have to be a huge sum of money. I mean, it could just be what's left in a savings account, if there is any, or something to that effect. But typically, these are the ways that people come into unexpected money that would be larger than a paycheck and might even be extravagant. So, if you start with 100 people who get a pot full of money, one of these ways or some other, after 3 generations, how many of them have expanded lifestyle? And the answer is like 14. We always say less than 20. That after 3 generations, most people have reverted to the way they were, their family has reverted to the way they were and the circumstances they had before the pot full of money. That's pretty astounding to me. The famous saying it's attributed to Andrew Carnegie, but it really exists in almost every major culture on earth, is shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. And the idea was that somebody works, they might make management, and then they're back to work. In either Vietnam or Cambodia, I believe it's like rice paddy to the stars to the rice paddy. In, I think it's the Netherlands, it's like clogs to leather to clogs. But it's the idea that in 3 generations, you move, typically 80% or more of the people move from the way they were to a pot full of money and back again. And one of the sayings is that generation 1 makes it or draws the lucky number, generation 2 enjoys it, and generation 3 wastes it. So, for our purposes, the question is, why? Why does this happen? And I'm saying family money, but this does not necessarily mean moneyed families. Just whatever you have, family money. Now, most people will try to save or invest, and at the very least, we hope everybody has a will. My wife and I had our first will done when we were in seminary, when the only thing we possessed on earth was a child. And but we wanted to make sure that at that time our only daughter, Rachel, was provided for. And I think that's something that everybody would aspire to. But many families deal with these things, and they maybe even try to teach their children to save, and if they have anything to leave, they mention that in the will. But the people who manage to transfer the values that are necessary to a succeeding generation, the things they have are a purpose, maybe even like a mission. They have values, and they communicate it, and they trust each other. And these are the deciding factors in whether you're part of that 80+% of people who are typical and the few that are atypical. We always think there's going to be some secret about money, but really, statistics and studies show that the predominant number of people who can move their family to enjoy is not the right word, but benefit from what they've received, it's based on communicating these things. So this is why values are important. And if you would like to leave something to your children, a family's money is not just about dollars and cents, but it's about values and virtues and communication. And the family dynamics are more important to your children than anything you do with money. Now I find that rather sobering. And let me just say, I think we mentioned earlier that after I retired, I was the executive director of our community foundation for a couple of years, and a lot of this work comes out of my work with the community foundation. And so I'm saying 20%, what do? They develop healthy family systems, they communicate and connect, they look forward, they prepare younger generations, and they think about legacy versus money, legacy versus inheritance. In just a minute, I'm going to take a breath and we're going to pause. But I want to talk to you about a family legacy, which typically, again, when we think about it, we think about that this means money. But you can leave money and really not leave a legacy. And you can leave a legacy with no money. So, how do we do this? The first thing to do would be to define family. So, I know my family watches this show. I've never seen it. What's that? Modern Family? Modern Family. And that's a interesting group of relationships. So, family for me, up until the time I was 6, family was stereotypical: mother, father, older daughter, younger son. When I was 6, my mother died. Family became grandmother, grandfather, grandfather's 2 sisters, my sister, and me. And for a few years, that was my family. It was a multi-generational family. That's who sat down to eat with each other. That's who went to church together every Sunday. That was my family. When my father remarried, I was part of a blended family. That was the shape of my family. My daughter is currently a single mom. That's the shape of her family. So, family, it's important to think who we're talking about in this relationship. So, then you define what your values are. And I think this is critical. I didn't really see anybody write anything down, but I want to encourage you to do this and to actually talk to somebody about it and make a list of your values. My wife and I did this a couple of years ago, and here are our family values. One is education, which I'm going to mention more about in a minute as a part of the legacy that I've received. But we're both fortunate. We've both got college educations. I'll tell you how long ago I started saving for Rachel. I got a CD with 12.5% interest. So, I mean, that was a long time ago. I mean, it was like the minimum amount. It was maybe $100, but it paid 12.5% interest. But we just have always believed in education. We got an education. We wanted our children, and we want our grandchildren to have an education. Second value is work. My younger sister is never had children, and she really dotes on my grandchildren. And one of the girls for Christmas gave her Storyworth, where you write answers to different questions about your life. And so I was copied on it, and the question was, what were some of your family traditions? And I thought, this is really interesting. I want to see what my sister's going to say, because when I look back, we didn't have a tradition about decorating the Christmas tree. We didn't have a decoration about who cooked what at Thanksgiving. We just didn't have many of those. But I knew what came to my mind, and her answer was work. My parents always worked. And I guess the tradition is we work. And that's exactly what I would have said. And so, when our girls were young, we were pretty adamant about chores, and we work on that with our grandchildren when they come to the house. But we believe in work. We also we really do believe in generosity. And we think that giving is important. And we believe in service. Of course, I feel like my life as a minister is service, but anything I've done somehow involves serving other people. So we've encapsulated this. And then gratitude. I think gratitude and generosity feed each other. And I think being thankful makes me more generous, but being generous makes me more thankful. I think it's almost two sides of one coin. If you're going to have one, you almost have to have the other. So we decided that what we were going to do was, my parents had died, and my dad didn't trust anybody. I'll just have to say, he just didn't trust anybody. And after his death, it was kind of an interesting situation with different things. And my wife and I were talking, so we're not going to do this to our kids. And so we just told him when we always go to the beach together once a year. When we go to the beach, we're going to find somebody to keep the kids, and we're going to have a conversation about this. And we sat down and we explained to them exactly what we cherished, what we believe in, what we give our lives to, and what we hoped they would continue to communicate to their kids. And it's hard. I mean, it's hard to go from, hey, we're all just having a good time down here at the beach, and we're going to have this family conversation. Well, what happened? Are you dying? They wanted to know, or is something going wrong? No. But we just wanted to have a time to actually say these things. And since that initial conversation, we've tried to find ways to work it into different things that we talk about. So define your values, and then you've got to have a plan how you're actually going to communicate it to your kids. And then here's where we kind of loop back. And I just want you to consider not generosity and saying you ought to have generosity as a value, but I want to tell you that generosity really is a piece of values that ties everything together. And one of the things I learned as working at our community foundation is that there is evidence that teaching families how to give responsibly is one of the most underappreciated tools in encouraging the next generation to do well. There's actually evidence that shows that one of the most effective ways to teach your kids about money is to teach your kids how to give. That is more effective than trying to teach them how to do a budget. And that doesn't mean you shouldn't teach them how to do a budget, but I don't think most of us think of that as money education. But teaching children and grandchildren how to give is really an underutilized resource in helping children do well, the next generation. So, teach generosity. And here are some things. One, a lot of times what we think of as gifts are really just transfers. It's really just transferring it out of my pocket to somebody else's pocket. And what makes it a gift is the heart behind it, and I think the explanation for why you're giving it. There was a story in our research about a college student whose grandfather gave him $10,000, and it was just a $10,000 check that appeared in the mail. And the young man interpreted it as his grandfather was trying to buy him off for something. And so he sent the check back. And the grandfather didn't mean that, but it created a rift that lasted for years because the grandfather was really just making a transfer by sending a check with, he thought he was being nice, and it was nice, it was very nice. But he didn't say, I'm giving this to you because I'm proud of you, because I want you to have, I mean, the explanation would have changed it from a gift, from a transfer to a gift. So I try to explain to my grandchildren why I give them things. Even if it's just, this is because I love you, this is because I'm so proud of you, this is just because it's today and I wanted to do something special for you. So don't assume, I think children are tremendous observers and terrible interpreters. They see things going on and they don't miss it, but they don't always understand what it means. So I think it's important to explain to children what we mean. Explain your generosity. We've got 4 grandchildren, 1 grandson. So he's the only male descendant. And so when we go out to eat, he wants to give the tip. He wants me to give him the money so he can give the tip. So I have just begun, he's just now at the math skills where I think I can teach him how to calculate that. But I want him to learn how to calculate what a generous tip is. And there are a lot of other ways, but to teach children, grandchildren, what I give to and why. And I would say teach generosity early. So in the time that John and I worked together at First Baptist Rome, we kind of went through a number of periods. We did have a period where we sent children pledge cards because we wanted children to consider the possibility that they could make a commitment to the church. And I think that, I don't know how many Dave Ramsey disciples we've got, but, I don't know what he does now because most people don't use cash, but it used to be the envelope system. My daughter teaches her kids, when you get your allowance, there's 3 envelopes. There's an envelope to save, there's an envelope to take to church, and there's an envelope that you can use for whatever. And she's been doing that for a while now, and of course that makes me super proud. And so here's one. The old joke about the reason why grandchildren and grandparents love each other so much is because they have a common enemy. Yeah, I mean that is a joke, but there is a special bond between grandchildren and grandparents. I've always felt it because my grandparents helped raise me, but I believe it's true for most people. It's true in healthy homes and healthy family systems. And we had a family through the community foundation that created an allowance to their grandchildren for the grandchildren to decide how it would be given away. And they actually had an understanding that the grandchildren would meet, and their cousins involved here, so it's not just one family. They wanted their grandchildren to stay connected to each other when they got older. They wanted their grandchildren to share their values, and they wanted their grandchildren to learn how to make decisions about giving. So they started with the oldest, who was a middle teenager at the time, and they made her the chair of the kid committee. And they had to come to their house, and they had to dress up and eat dinner, and when dinner was over, all the adults left the room, and the kids decided how to give away what for kids was a lot of money. And you can do that, like these people did it through the community foundation. You could do that with cash. I mean, you could just say, here's $20, and you've got to decide where you're going to give it. But the first couple of years, before they'd leave the room, they'd talk to them about the things they gave to. And then there were 4 kids, so after 2 years, there were 5. The next oldest one became the chair, and then after 2 years, the next oldest one, so that the younger ones had an opportunity to see it modeled by their older cousins and siblings. And I think that's brilliant. I just think that's absolutely brilliant. And I think it's accomplished all their purposes. And all those kids came through John's program. So, think legacy, not inheritance. So, my maternal grandparents, lived on a farm in Tacey, West Virginia, and I just challenge anybody without Google to find Tacey. It was a small farm. They didn't have indoor plumbing until my mother and her siblings got the money together to put a bathroom in their house. But that family, every night at dinner, grandmother made them either quote something like the poem Hiawatha or Shakespeare or something like that. And out of that family, when they died, the farm was worth $80 an acre, and that was it. It was a small farm. That was what they left. Not much money. But every one of my cousins would tell you that is our legacy. We meet there about every 10 years because we just have to go back. Because the values that were instilled in our parents were instilled in us. And there was no money, but it was an incredible legacy of the desire to learn, the desire to do the right thing. They were farm people, the desire to work. And I just tell you, that is my legacy. That's the legacy I received. Create and communicate a set of core values, which is going to define your legacy. And if you can, create a shared mission. This is what we do. I think it's probably not said very much anymore, but it used to be like people would say, raising their kids, Uldrichs don't do that. Our family, Sniders don't do that, or this is what Sniders do. I'm not sure that that's something we should have lost. I think that's a good thing. And I would say make opportunity, not money, because not everybody has money, but make opportunity a family asset and not just a personal achievement. And I think you do that by communicating these things. And then help every generation to think of themselves as that first generation. We talked about in 3 generations. The key is to instill the values so that every generation thinks of themselves as the first. When people have some money, one of the first things they do, well, let me just say, I've seen a lot of people who worked their way through college, who then when their kids were old enough, never had to work, and they were always upset because their kids didn't have the same values. So our younger daughter called home one time and said, I just need you to know I am the poorest of my friends. And I said, oh, easy, easy. And she said, what? And I said, get a job. And she will tell you that she made the best grades, had the best part of her college experience when she worked and went to school. So, help her be the first generation of her own by trying to communicate the things that we think were important in shaping us to, be who we are. And then teach generosity. Whatever way, if it's teaching a child how to calculate a tip, or here's your church envelope, put your quarter in it, whatever that may be, we can teach generosity. So I don't know, thus endeth the lesson. I don't know if you have any things you'd like to share. I really hope you'll consider writing down values that you share, and if you have children, if you have grandchildren, communicating those to those younger. Anybody want to ask a question or add a comment?
When's it too late to share your values?
Never. My girls both had their children when we did it. That was just when we realized we needed to. When is it too late to, if you can't hear, is it too late, when is it too late to share those values? And I'd say never. All right, John. Well, thank you for letting me be here, and appreciate it, and just the best to you and Jennifer.
On Sunday morning, we talked a little bit about generosity. I used that Christian Smith quote, and we just broke it down and just talked about some of that functional definition. But I'll say I appreciate Joel's commitment to being here, to the wisdom he shared, but also to say, having come from a family who never talked about money, right? Who as a child of parents who were financially responsible, who paid all their bills, but we never talked about money. To have people in my life later who helped me understand that money is only a tool. That was scale falling off my eyes moment. Because so many times we only value ourselves by, rolling over. It's sad, but one of the things I do in the morning, if Jennifer's not in the bed, I roll over and pick my phone up first. But if she's there, I say good morning. And then I roll and pick up my phone, and I hit the email button, what has come through over the night. And then it's so sad. But I log on to our bank account and say, all right, we're still all in the black numbers, and I just close it. I don't know why I do that. It's just something I've done. The way that no more in my life has the balance sheet given me worth after I realized that. But there was a day it did. And I still fight that urge. But I said on Sunday, these values and this legacy work is so helpful to me because without it, I would need to make $1 more next year than I make this year to feel better about myself. But what I've realized is, as a part-time youth minister who couldn't organize himself out of a wet paper bag, Doc, at Trinity Baptist Church in Seneca, South Carolina, making $12,000 a year part-time, I have never been more happy in ministry, because I was living into my calling, what I feel like God created me to be. So finding that legacy is so important, and those values are what are so important, because money comes and money goes, but those legacies and values matter. And one of the people who I learned that from is Joel Snider, and I'm grateful for it. So I wanted to say that and say thank you for being here. Next week, we're going to wrap it up a little bit and kind of land the plane, but I'm grateful for the good work that Joel did the last 3 weeks, and he'll be here if y'all have questions for him. Thank you. Good night.